Hi, everybody. Welcome back inside the Talking Elite Fitness Studios as we recap a very busy Saturday, moving day, if you will, in week one of semifinals. Tommy Marquez joined in the studio by our crew on site. This time it is Brian Friend and Lauren Khalil. They drew the short straws for Saturday. But guys, a ton of stuff moving and shaking on Saturday, as is always the case. We do get some withdrawals, some big names, Saxon Patrick, Griffin Raleigh dropping out as well. But one thing that does stand out is the withdrawals from Alexander Carone and Kirby Foxall. They were withdrawn for very interesting reasons, so much so that CrossFit released a press statement. Brian, can you shed a little bit more light on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a very sensitive topic that a lot of people are being quite vocal about. And I think, CrossFit is included in that, having sent out a statement in that regard. I know from conversations here on site that whether you're a coach who has to advise an athlete to withdraw from a competition or part of the competition team that has to communicate that to an athlete for any number of reasons, that it's never an easy thing to do. And I think that the tough part here is just like people may be misunderstanding what exactly happened in terms of making this decision. There were a lot of conversations that were had. It was a sports team, it was the medical team, and ultimately it was a combination of those things that determined that because of the potential risk for the athletes and in the interest of the spirit of competition rule, which is communicated to the athletes in the briefing prior to the competition, that for both of those athletes, it was deemed that they were not going to be able to continue in the competition. I think there were some conversations prior to that maybe frustrated, in particular Alexander Carone, and obviously people are also familiar with some of the history that he's had in this sport, having had injuries in live competition before, and that some of that perceived inconsistency, and maybe it is inconsistency, is what's kind of lingering as the problem here. But I think I just want to emphasize having the chance to see on the back end how difficult those decisions are, how many conversations go into that it's not made in a vacuum, it's not made without care and respect for the athletes, and that even if you don't necessarily like the way that it came down, to try to have some empathy for everyone involved in this situation, because it's not easy.
Yeah, great points there, Brian. But one thing that does kind of shine some light on it, similar to what Brian is doing right here, is the fact that there was a press release, Lauren. I think it's something we can all agree we'd like to see more of.
Yeah, and this is a topic where there's so many different ways that you can peel back the layers to decide what you actually agree with. But all of that aside, we're seeing transparency. In the middle of a live event, CrossFit sent out a press release to everybody within hours of all of this happening. And that's something that we've never seen before. So I just want to reiterate how important it is to send those press releases out, be transparent, inform us exactly what the decision was and behind that decision was. And regardless of how you feel, you can at least say that they communicated, and that's something that we keep asking for, the community keeps asking for moving forward. So it was at least good to see that.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would complain with more communication from the source specifically. But while all that was going on, there was actually a competition that was taking place, and we'll talk about more on the men in just a second. But we're going to start with the team competition, as they actually wrapped up their competition today. We started with some heavyweights being moved. You can see Tola Maracanio and Christian Harris. That is a heavy weightlifter's dream right there. But it was proven fitness yet again. They've got some heavy hitters on their squad, and they showed up in a big way in this first event, blowing away the field with the top score. Going into the finale, though, we did have a bubble race on our hands. There was a handful of top scores, including one from CrossFit Resurrection in a previous heat. CrossFit Milford on your screen. They were the gatekeeper there for that final spot. At the top, though, is AB CrossFit with a raucous crowd in attendance. They absolutely blitzed this test to close the weekend strong, and then move fast, lift heavy, another strong performance from them. But guys, looking at this team competition as a whole, there was a ton to talk about. But in your mind, Brian, we'll start with you. Which team elevated their stock throughout their performance this weekend?
Well, a team that really I had my eye on coming in here was CLT, the Grit House. I mean, this is a team that is very high level, but they had a really unfortunate situation a month ago when kind of their leader, Kevin Steinhaus, had a partially torn bicep. I had a chance to talk to him the day after it happened, and he said he believed that he would be able to come back and compete for semifinals, and they were definitely able to do that. Look at their performances this weekend. They're one of those teams that just kind of was hovering in that middle echelon the whole weekend, so they didn't get a lot of spotlight on them, but they had several finishes inside the top 10, nothing worse than a 13th. And whereas I feel that some other teams might have been kind of building momentum into this. They were just trying to like get through this weekend. So I think that the sixth place finish here bodes really well for them. And with 2 months for him to get back into the top form that we know he's capable of, that they'll be even more dangerous at the games than they were this weekend in Orlando.
Certainly putting the grit in the Grit House name there with that performance, despite the injury that they had to deal with. Now, Lauren, you were on the ground floor, so I have a feeling, or at least a little bit of a sense as who you might pick here, given the energy that was presented from one team.
AB CrossFit. I mean, I can't talk highly enough, not just about the team, but the crowd that they brought. They were standing behind us. They were loud in every single event. It wasn't just when the team won, but every single event you could hear them. There were people crying, cheering, throwing flags out onto the floor after the final event. They even had a dog that was their mascot. But I have been so impressed with them all weekend long. They had 2 first place finishes, not many mistakes by that team. And Brian, if I am not incorrect here, you had them ranked at 17th. You know a lot about teams. You know a lot about athletes here, but I think that we can all agree that we are impressed to see them standing on the podium and punching a ticket to the CrossFit Games.
I will jump in here and say I was impressed because the scene at the finish line looked like it was right out of Anchorman. There was a guy on fire. I think I saw someone with a trident. It was just fabulous and a great way to wrap up the team competition. And congratulations to all the qualifiers that made their way to the top 10 at this particular semifinal. But we're going to move on now to the individual competition and the women's division. We started the day off with Linda, and back when they showed up for the first time in 2018 at regionals, Amanda Barnhart actually got capped. This time around, though, she earns herself 100 points as the only athlete to go sub 12 minutes. And then in test number 4, former Olympic weightlifter Dana Paran puts up the top lift, 210 pounds from an earlier heat. And then the back-to-back test number 5, another top time from an early heat. This time it's Sydney Wells, the former Missouri track athlete, puts up the top time, and no one could catch it. A much needed 100 points there for Sydney. But looking at some of the top scores across the board and how the leaderboard is shaken out through these first few days of competition, Lauren, it looks like there's a clear separation between the elite in this semifinal and everybody else.
And that's just it. And it's not even the elite that are going to be qualifying for the CrossFit Games, but it's that upper tier. We talked about before in our preview shows how there's those different tiers of athletes. But if we look at 1 through 6, Alexis Raptis sits in 6th place, and she is 57 points ahead of Fee Sagafi, who sits in 8th. So it just kind of speaks to the caliber of that upper tier level of athletes. Now, something specifically notable is in the final event from the day, tests 4 and 5, the lowest that anybody in that top 6 finished was 11th. And that really just shows how incredible the top of the top are. Somebody who really stood out to me today, though, was Emma Lawson. She didn't actually make the 205-pound snatch, but she caught it, bailed it behind her, and that alone impressed me because you can tell that she's got more juice and fire in her, and I can't wait to see what comes from her in the future.
You got to actually make the lifts preceding it to even touch or sniff 205. So certainly impressive setup for there. But Brian, looking at the bubble race now, there are some razor thin margins for these final few game spots. Maybe who are a few athletes and names to keep in mind as we go into Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, we see the top 11 on the screen there. And to me, I'm looking at Caroline Stanley as someone who's answered all the questions. I thought she had an outside chance to make the games coming here, but obviously it's a super, super difficult field. Looking at what remains and what we've already seen from her, I feel really good about her chances to stay within this top 11. A super unknown name in number 9, Amanda Fisher. She got really off to a hot start this weekend. She's had some highs and some lows. I think she'll have a big test in the morning tomorrow, but it's always exciting when there's a name that comes out of nowhere and throws their hat in there. And then the gatekeeper right now is Sydney Wells, and right behind her, not on the screen here, is Ashley Wozni. So I'm looking at those 2 women tomorrow, both of whom are making a push to get into the game. Sydney Wells with an event win, obviously that goes a long way. The Lagos rope climbs will again be the kind of the breaking point. If she's able to manage those, I like her chances in the finale. And Ashley Wozni coming over from the team competition last year where she was 11th with OBA, throwing her name in the ring. I wasn't sure if she'd actually be in contention for a game spot or not. She's looked great as well, and it's going to be tight tomorrow for sure.
And each one of those athletes had some awesome moments in this day. We saw both Sydney with the event win and Wozni putting up a big weight in the snatch event. But moving on now to the men's division and the 300 points that were up for grabs today. And to kick things off, Sam Cornwall moved to the front of the pack pretty early on. And this is a test that we've seen other athletes be able to reel people in. And especially when you have athletes like Roman Krennikov right in your rear view mirror, it's hard to hold off, particularly with an event like this that certainly wears on you. Jason Hopper, another strong performance overall this weekend. But in the end, Samuel Cornwall showing why everyone at Mayhem thinks this could be a huge breakout year for him, wins test 3 to kick the day off with 100 points. And then in the back-to-back events that we finished the days with today, we had just a back and forth between the earlier heats. In heat number 5, Jack Farlow, the former Teen Games athlete, throws up 300 pounds in the snatch, basically throwing the gauntlet down for the later heats. And Roman Krennikov, not to be outdone, puts up the top time at least through 5 heats. Remember, he was outside the top 10 coming into the day and daring anyone to chase him on that assault runner. And then, man, Jason Hopper, a lifetime PR at 305 pounds. We saw an announcement of his arrival with a 300-pound snatch a few years ago, tops it here. And Jeff Adler answers the call from Roman Krennikov. Another 100 points, really showcasing some improvement on the runner, something that we know Jeff has been working on. But as far as that highlight is concerned, Lauren, it kind of speaks to what we've seen thus far. All these big name athletes kind of trading blows like a heavyweight boxing match.
Yeah, and what's crazy is looking at the leaderboard, we have the 3 that are in the top, and they were able to hold those positions. But 4 through 10, that's where we've seen a lot of shifts. As you mentioned, Roman Krennikov was able to bump back up into contention, 4th place right now from 11. A lot of really fun races between him, Jason Hopper, Sam Cornwall, and it just was like that all day long. When I spoke with some of these athletes, they spoke to how much more impressive it is to work in person versus online, because you're able to have some of those races that you just wouldn't see in an online qualifier. And in some of the video that we saw a little bit earlier, you could even see Jason Hopper looking to his left, looking to his right. And as a spectator, that's really what you want to see, is them leaving it all out on the floor and fighting for those top scores. It was a fun day overall. I can't wait for the final day of competition where we really see them start to edge it out, especially test number 7. I'm most excited for that, because that's when people are either going to burn it to the ground or they are going to benefit from just leaving it all out there.
Yeah, I still can't get over the 305 snatch. He made it look like me and Brian make 135. Actually, I don't know. Brian makes it look better than I do, at least. But Brian, kind of looking around the rest of the leaderboard, and we obviously have a ton of experience at the top, but filling out those other game spots, maybe some new names. Who stands out to you as kind of the big surprises through these first 2 days?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to just start with Luke Parker here. I got to train with him in January, and then he went and competed at the Fittest Experience, where he had a frankly underwhelming performance, and I was really uncertain of what we'd end up seeing from him when it came to semifinals. I know that this guy believes he has what it takes to be top 40 in the world, and he's showing it so far. Austin Hatfield is on the bubble right now, and he's a guy that really hasn't gotten too much attention. He was 11th place worldwide in the Open, and he's sitting 12th place right now in one of the top contending men fields worldwide. So hats off to him. No matter what happens tomorrow, he's got my eye and my attention. And lastly, Spencer Panchik. He's not in a qualifying spot right now, but he's moving in the right direction, and I think he's a threat to all these guys that are lurking around the bubble tomorrow.
We got to see Spencer kind of hang on that bubble and kind of attack in previous seasons, whether it was the West Coast Classic or out in Knoxville last year. Guys, great stuff as always. Thanks very much for taking some time after a busy Saturday to join the show as well. We'll let you guys go get some rest, and we'll check back in tomorrow for Sunday.
Thanks, Tommy.
Love it. Thanks, brother.
Moving on now to some semifinal action elsewhere on the globe, as Africa wrapped up day 2 of their competition at the Rebel Renegade Games in Johannesburg. And once again, it was CrossFit FBDV Mayhem Africa ruling the day. They wouldn't win any event. Cape CrossFit and 10 Star would hold on to that notion, but they would have a pair of second place finishes to still hold on to the lead through 2 days overall, as you see them sporting those cool white leaders jerseys. But then over on the women's side, Mariska Smith walks away as your overall leader after the day. Megan Fall wins event 3. Basnay wins number 4, but then Smith finishes strong with the top time overall in event 5, makes up 55 points and leads by 11 points heading into the third and final day of competition for the women. Could see a new qualifier there. That's exciting. And then on the men's side, a familiar face sits atop the leaderboard. Jason Smith holds on to the top spot, finishes of 9th, 7th, 8th throughout the day. The consistency is what rules the day for him. Keelan Henry, El Sayed Hassona, and Justin Holiday were your 3 event winners for the day overall, as Smith looks to make his way back to the CrossFit Games for another year representing Africa. Looking at what's on store for Sunday and the remaining schedule for this week 1 of competition. North America East, the individuals will be going solo. They will tackle Sunday with just 2 events. They'll have event 6 and event 7 to wrap things up in Orlando. And then Africa, they'll have a full slate of competition. Team event 5, individual event 6, then reset for team event 6, and the individuals will wrap things up on event number 7. Congrats again to all of the team qualifiers out in North America East. We'll be back tomorrow to put a little bow on all of the week 1 semifinal action. For Lauren Khalil, Brian, friend, I'm Tommy Marquez. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow for Sunday of week 1 of semifinals.